This is Festival Past Stories, a podcast series is told by the people who create and make festivals come to life. You will go behind the stage, kitchen, or studio door to hear the stories of passion and inspiration that started some of the world's most beloved festivals. Hear the startup stories and how an idea went from what if to what's next. This is Festival Past Stories, a podcast series is told by the people who create and make festivals come to life. We take you behind the stage, the kitchen, or the studio door to hear those stories of passion and inspiration for some of the world's most beloved festivals. Festivals have so many elements to them, and today we're going to talk to somebody who knows a lot about getting talent to a festival, getting brands to a festival, getting clients in general to a festival, and getting them all to come together. Please welcome Nedda Saltani, the Director of Lifestyle and Talent PR for EFG PR. Nedda, I'm going to start with 2020's most loaded question. How are you?
I mean, look, PR is such a nonstop game that we play, that we were all, I think PR people look forward to working from home and getting that day off after the festival to just relax and get your head right before you jump into the next project. But this, prolonged space of working from home has turned me into someone who moves from space to space on my couch, and like Monday I'll sit on the left by the window, and Wednesday you sit in the middle, and I try not to sit on the right side of the couch because that's where I would come home and sit after work. So I'm good. I'm lucky to be working. I'm lucky to still be busy and have people and talent that want to work with us as a company and me as a person. And so I'm thankfully good. I'm mentally exhausted by everything, but who isn't? And it's relatable. And my mental exhaustion is nothing compared to everybody else that, really is going through stuff. So yeah, good, yeah. I guess.
And I think, although some people say, well, you've been on vacation, you've been at home and so on. I think at one point we're really looking forward to that vacation. And since we can't go anywhere, my vacation is going to be my favorite spot on the couch that you were just referring to, the one that we don't want to go to right now. That will be my vacation spot. So, look, you've been with your firm for about a year. No, I'm going to back that up a little bit. So this is kind of fun. Where somebody who normally sets up interviews in your career in PR, you're now being interviewed yourself. And I have a small background in PR, including my degree from college was actually in public relations. I dabbled in it for a short time with some talent and so on. So I know the idea of trying to build someone's personal brand, and so the idea of building a brand to connect with those celebrities and so on. So I want to get into that, but let's talk about everything we do here is talking about festivals. And your own personal career festival. I know you've been with this firm for about a year, but you go back a while. So tell us how you got into the business and your journey along the way that led you to this dream job at EFG.
It's been a lot of different roles that led to this role. I grew up as a figure skater amateur, competitively across the country, and then transitioned into coaching for a long time. And ultimately, as my talent and my skaters were getting better at their sport and we were traveling and I would be overseas, even if I had the worst skater, I still wanted them to sign all the autographs, even if it was 3. I still wanted them to get their, push their way into the press room after the big performance. And I found myself navigating them more from a coach perspective, and then I would switch into a PR perspective. And I kept being told over and over, you're like a natural PR person. Do you know that? You're very talkative. You tell stories. You're really passionate about the things that you love, and you really highlight and promote them in a way that's very organic and real. And it kind of snowballed from there. I started working just locally in the dance music community in LA for some nightclubs and things that I was a patron of, but I had become friendly with a lot of organizers, and it just kept going. Then I had artists approach me, do you want to tour manage? And I started kind of taking over friends. And as the DJ kind of revolution in music took over, my space suddenly exploded, and people were coming to me asking me to post this, share that. Will you be in Vegas? Can you help us with this? Do you know the person that does that? And it just was again, a snowball effect. So as I transitioned out of coaching, I I like to say I retired at 35 from coaching, which people think is really funny, but I had gotten—
Some people get into coaching at 35.
Yeah.
After their career is over, that's when they get into coaching.
Yeah, and I was able to kind of reflect on myself and say, look, I started coaching at 18 to kind of pay for the fun and pay for my car and pay for gas. And then I was able to really make it into something lucrative and successful. And I had an alternate on the Olympic team. I went to 4 world championships with skaters from different countries. So I had gotten what I needed. And suddenly I was like 35 going, wait a sec, like I really need to figure the next phase out. So this like hobby of helping people on the side, I got an opportunity to literally start at the bottom of the totem pole of a really, amazing PR firm that does talent and brands here in LA called Anderson Group PR. And I literally went from making tons of money to making assistant money at 35 in LA. And it was, I went from driving a Mercedes to getting a Prius, and I literally, everything changed. It was a crazy jump, but I took the leap of faith, and I really haven't looked back ever since.
Well, you can tell everybody you switched from the Mercedes to the Prius for the environment, and then you sound very LA and very environmentally conscious. So well done.
There's definitely a bratty side of yourself that you have to kind of humble yourself with when you suddenly get that first paycheck and you realize, I can't pay to fix my AC in my car, and this car isn't really worth it. And what is this really all about anyway? So to me, I'm like a happy Prius girl, and I love that I, in my own way, have helped the environment, so to speak, even though it was like a force, but yeah, it was a change that had to happen. And I think it came with the territory that I was getting into. I immediately understood that getting into PR was not about the flash. You didn't have to have the fancy car. You didn't have to have, the jewels and the drip and the high heels on the red carpet. I was told very quickly from the beginning, you are invisible. You stand behind your talent and your brand, and it's not about you. And I really related to that because that's what coaching was as a figure skater. So it all kind of related in a really real way for me.
It all comes back to what your gift is and what you're very good at. And I think your best PR move was just by having to take to get the Prius. All of a sudden, people are looking at you in a whole new light. You're like, yeah, actually, I couldn't afford the $80,000 car anymore. It was totally different. So you mentioned touring. As a figure skater, I imagine you toured a lot. But did you take anybody up on the offer to any of these DJs or anybody to go on tour with them and run their publicity?
Well, I mean, when the DJ kind of world exploded, it would be like 2009, 2010. And I say that mildly because it's not to say that dance music and EDM and all of those festivals didn't exist. They existed and they were thriving, but in a much more underground way, in a much more taboo way. And then suddenly this shift happened where, nightclubs in Vegas wanted to hear EDM, and nightclubs in Miami switched to playing EDM. And so you saw a lot of talent coming to the States to play those larger markets. And as I was attached to certain artists, definitely, I, went to Miami and we did Ultra, and we did the whole Miami Music Week. We would go to Vegas. There was a year that I checked in after the first year that the Cosmopolitan opened in Las Vegas. When I checked in there, one of the associates said to me, wow, when she saw my folio. And I said, what's that? And she's like, you've stayed here quite a bit, and we've only been open a year. And I said, well, how many times? And she said, you've stayed here 32 weekends out of 52 weeks in a year.
You're like sitting in the presidential suite. Why am I still sitting here in the lobby? Why isn't anyone taking my bags, taking my stuff? Let's go.
Why am I carrying everybody's luggage? Yeah, so I definitely did the touring thing. I lived on no sleep, waking up and making sure they get on their plane the next morning, or staying up until the flight leaves at 6 a.m. with them and knocking on their door, shooing away fans and lingerers. And it's been a road, basically.
Fans and lingerers inside and outside the room. You're like, okay, everyone, wow, there's a lot of people in this room. Let's go. Yeah. Let's keep going.
Mm-hmm. Basically.
So you mentioned, and there were all these EDM festivals. So you were going to a lot of these festivals as well.
Oh, I proudly can tell you I have been going to those since I was 18. In fact, that's what some of my early coaching money was going to, was just paying for the Adidas and the cool vintage clothes and, you know, the things that made me happy, which was continuing to dance and be with my friends. And as I shifted away from being an athlete, I just wanted to find other ways to express myself. And the community that was growing here in LA in the 90s was young and vibrant and, you know, was being led by a few different people that ultimately continued to grow. So when I was able to jump back into it and make it into like a job, it was really reigniting a part of myself that was always there, that I had been following the entire time, but I was suddenly making like a paycheck out of it, which was really crazy to me. So yeah, it was not anything that didn't exist. I just suddenly turned my passion into a job. Does that make sense?
Like you were excellent skating, and you turned that into a career in coaching skating, and then you took the thing that you did on the side for fun, and then turned that into a job. You're like, I love EDM. I'm paying to go to these festivals. Then suddenly, other people are paying you to go to those festivals. So I have heard people say, that thing that you wake up in the morning, that gift, use that gift, exploit that gift, and use your gift all day long. And I think entrepreneurs and the founder of Festival Pass has started a bunch of different businesses, and that's what he says. He's got the entrepreneur's disease, and he starts businesses and sees them through to purchase or to exit, whatever it is. But he'll never stop doing the entrepreneurial thing, regardless of the environment. I mean, he's really getting Festival Pass off the ground during a time when there's no festivals. So what do? We find content by having conversations with people who love festivals, people who've been involved with them. So you've been involved with festivals from a fan to then now driving talent to them. And you were with Live Nation. I saw that you were with Live Nation for a while. And with Live Nation, you must have seen every kind of musical festival out there.
I definitely had access to most of their festival brands. There were actually some PR managers from the different entities that they brought on. So, as I worked for Insomniac, which is the dance music brand, and I headed up their PR, for example, they also own the Lollapalooza brand and some other festivals. So I was able to go visit other festivals, learn about them, jump into what they do and the different types of ways that maybe they entice and engage, and bring those best practices back to us. So definitely working with them, their portfolio gave me access to so much more that I wasn't seeing, because they own such a large number of clubs and theaters that were constantly doing small shows. They were doing the large festivals. They do dance music, hip hop, everything. So I definitely was able to engage in a lot.
Sorry, we got disconnected there for a second. So let's reframe that question.
Do that one again. Let's do that one again.
Which is why we don't go live, especially when we're dealing with technology like this. But that was on my side. My Wi-Fi suddenly just kicked out. I don't know what happened. Okay. So we'll rephrase that a little better. So Nedda, you worked with Live Nation for a while. So you must have had access or had the what's the best way to say it? I'll just say, well, you worked for Live Nation as your career went on. You worked for Live Nation. That must have seemed like a dream, being around all that music and all those festivals. Did you have unlimited or unfettered access to all these different great EDM festivals that you loved, or were you focused on more of rock and roll, or what were you doing then?
So I worked for Live Nation under the Insomniac brand. For those not understanding of what the Insomniac brand is, they are best known for EDC, which is Electric Daisy Carnival, bringing like 400,000 people over a course of a weekend now in Vegas, formerly in LA. So yes, on the EDM side, we had access to any and everything because ultimately they're an industry leader. And so people wanted us to come and see and visit and check out what they're doing and learn from us while we learn from them. But I also, took the time to learn who the other PR directors were for other brands that the company had, such as Lollapalooza. I was able to go visit their festival as a guest, but also getting into their PR practices and bringing some of their programs and things that they put in motion for talent and press and brands on site back to Insomniac, and really be able to create an environment that wasn't so niche, because ultimately dance music was so niche, and I was really interested in how to make it more open and understanding of people, that it wasn't this like wild, crazy place, you know, that was just not understood by the wider public.
Not to bring it mainstream, but to bring it more into maybe with mainstream brands.
Yeah, ultimately it's hard to engage brands that are not like, let's say, the Red Bull or an alcohol brand, because they understand the need to dance all night. But, you know, you want to get into beauty, you want to get into some of the type of activations that a Coachella type festival gets, where they have clothing brands, beauty brands, drinks, everything across the board wants to be involved. And so ultimately, the more good PR and the more widespread PR, doing different types of stories that shared more about the different facets, such as the technology behind it, or using a speedway and how we transform speedways, like those were the types of stories that I liked telling, because ultimately it showed a more broad understanding to a public that may not know anything about the brand.
So how do you see brands spending their money at festivals going forward after all of this is behind us?
I mean, health and safety, number one. I think ultimately, you know, health and safety was always a huge practice at the festival for us, keeping everyone hydrated and safe and not getting ill or having heat stroke or like whatever comes up on site. But now there's such an elevated need for this, and finding ways to maybe integrate, I don't know, sanitation stations with, you know, pumps of antibacterial, you know, when you wash your hands. And I don't really know, though, how to engage ultimately with the right way to say a brand should engage, because ultimately people's health and safety has to feel safe first. I think it's a good thing that they're starting to do temperature gauging on people, such as like at the airport, if you want to enter, you know, a building or, you know, things like that. But brands need to find ways that are outside of the norm, whether that's a sign or whether that's something that shows that they're engaged in your safety. Because at the end of the day now, no one cares if they're going to get a free bottle of deodorant from some deodorant brand who decided to put up a little activation for free chapstick and deodorant, if when they touch the chapstick and deodorant, they're going to get sick.
Although we're very thankful at these large outdoor festivals that somebody is handing out deodorant.
Yeah.
Like, thank you. Yeah.
And I say that with truth, because that was actually something we had on site at one of our festivals. Mm-hmm.
I think somebody missed the boat on that for Woodstock. Speed Stick marketing, the head of marketing at Speed Stick was like, that would have been a great opportunity. Sorry, I missed that one. Yeah, I'm gonna be excited to go to the Purell concert series. I'm like, well, Purell's sponsoring it, so you know it's gonna be safe. Or Purell should start. I mean, they've made a lot. They are one of the companies who've made a lot of money during this. They should like start branding stadiums. Purell, you know, for an NFL game, you'll hear the announcers say, "Welcome to Purell Stadium. Everyone's been checked and cleaned. And the ball's been sanitized, so let's kick off."
Exactly.
But seriously, there's going to be, the consumer is going to be thinking about all of these things associated with it. And I know right now you've got people out there without masks and some people who refuse to wear them.
Mm-hmm.
Just opinion, my personal opinion is how ridiculous that is. How simple it is to put a little bit of face covering on to tell the person next to you that, you know what, I don't want you to get sick, so I am going to wear this small little bit of discomfort. And I'm not going to sneeze on you or breathe any germs on you. And thank you for doing the same.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't seem so hard. But when we go back to N95 Mask Stadium or N95 Speedway for some big music fest, what is it going to be like? What is it? What are the brands? Look, what are the brands coming to you for right now? What do they expect you to do for them?
Right now, the brands that we work with at EFG are all working on ways to pivot their voice. So ultimately now,
magic word right there. Pivot.
Right?
Ding, ding,
Yeah,
ding, ding.
I used the keywords, right? So
You get a prize. We're going to send you a prize after this. I don't know what it's going to be. It'll be tickets to Purell Stadium. That's what it's going to be.
But it's ultimately like helping brands find their voice in a sensitive way that makes sense. You know, me pushing a CBD brand just because it's CBD now doesn't make sense, but how do we turn pushing a CBD brand for wellness and mental space and taking care of yourself, you know, is a natural pivot, you know, because now you're able to highlight key components of the brand that maybe people didn't look at it as. Or, you know, some brands have come up with Zoom, you know, meetings where people come together and talk about their mental health. I think ultimately it's really finding what the authenticity is behind the brand. Like, we work with a company that's a Black business owner, and he's in the technology space, which makes him very unique. And ultimately, he didn't want to talk about his brand over the last month or two. He wanted to find ways to amplify other Black business voices, Black Lives Matter, things that made sense for him in this moment because it felt self-serving to talk about themselves. I had another client with a film that came out. Finally, he's in a lead role. We finally get a huge, you know, team behind it at a huge movie company ready to push it out. They reached out to me. We're ready to push the film. And he said, I don't feel comfortable doing a lot of interviews because this is the wrong time. People were dying. And it's a hard space to be in when you're trying to like generate interest and still feel authentic, but know that ultimately, if even a hair of it is off, you could be, you know, let's say canceled, or you can be misconstrued, or your brand suddenly goes from being happy on a Tuesday to being completely disrupted on a Wednesday, you know? So it's
back
really
to that question of the 2020 hot topic is, how are you? that relates to people, brands, everything out there. Like everybody, people are questioning associations with certain brands. And I mean, before this started, before we went into lockdown and so on, I mean, there were already young people that didn't want to work for certain companies, or they were just, I think just the younger people just have this, you know, I got out of school and I was happy to have a job, and then there was like a 401k, and I was like, great. And I never looked at, you know, and I was never like, well, let me look into the social justice issues of these brands that are in my 401k that are going to be for my retirement. Now people are looking at all those kind of things and saying, telling their company that they don't think that they should be invested in whatever because that company's not good for the environment, or that company isn't good for social justice, or so on. So I think where some people really kill the millennials, I think they're very thoughtful, and they're very outspoken, which is good. So we were talking about. We started sort of not pivoting, but like heading into that area of social justice and so on. So I was going to say, you know, I saw your LinkedIn profile exactly what you do with your firm now. It says you raise awareness for industry brands and events. So I was going to say something around raising that for health initiatives and social justice initiatives going forward. So we'll get into like the COVID stuff now. Okay.
Okay.
Right. So we'll call this area COVID confidential. Obviously, this is what we're all dealing with right now. So how is your firm doing through all of this?
We have stayed busy, which is insane. Sadly, because so many companies have not, or a lot of times when you're dealing with, for example, with a talent-based industry directly, you know, they go on hiatus, their projects have stopped filming, where we kind of walk the line between working with talent and working with brands, and then how they correlate to each other. I have a few celebrity talent that I just work with directly on their PR campaigns, and I've tried to be really sensitive and work on things that they want to work on, but at the same time, totally understand if they don't feel like posting this, or they don't want to be a part of that because it doesn't align with them. On the brand side, yeah, we're continuing to figure out ways to collectively be sensitive, authentic, and real to what the brand stands for, and just really step cautiously. It's a very nuanced line that we're walking on right now.
So have you been able to find branding opportunities and perhaps even new revenue streams for some of the celebrity clients, as well as some of those brands, to say, these are the people that you should have your brand associated with right now?
Sure. A lot of what's going on now is, social media based, and how brands can align themselves with certain talent that makes sense for them to share their story, for them to come on board this brand and navigate it with them in this new time. But I think every day has been different during this time.
Oh, yeah, it really has.
As every different kind of thing develops or doesn't develop, you kind of continue to say, okay, well, that didn't work. How are we going to do this? Okay, well, that didn't work. How are we going to do that? So I've just continued to do my digging, do my due diligence on trying to stay in contact with the media that I do work with. Sadly, have learned so many have been laid off and furloughed. So suddenly the contacts that we think we have that we can reach out to don't exist anymore. And now you have to find a new person to kind of cultivate a new relationship with. So it's been tricky, but we are, knock on wood, very lucky to be busy, and I continue to keep working and have opportunities to, tell our story. So it's a good thing. We're in a good space, and I just wish for that for everybody at this moment.
Yeah, and you said every day is different. There have been, I will admit, there have been a few days where I thought it was Monday and it turned out to be a Tuesday, or vice versa. So there's a lot of that from when you're working from home and staring at the same couple of walls or so on. It can be monotonous, but I would agree. There's been something in the news. There's been something from a health standpoint. There's been something in family-related matters that has been different every day, and that all kind of comes back to what we do between 9 to 5, or whoever still works hours of 9 to 5. I don't know who they are, but during that during a normal work day, it's like it is so. I think in a way it's exciting. There always seems to be. In that pivot environment that we're in, everybody is finding new ways to use their talents. And if they're not, they probably will find a new job to do after this. I think it's creativity is really winning the game. And people are coming up with some amazing ways to rebrand themselves, or to find new avenues for their clients or for the brands that they work with. So how going forward can you raise awareness? You say one of the things that you guys do, you raise awareness for industry brands and events. How can you raise awareness for health initiatives and social justice initiatives going forward for your clients, your talent clients, and for the brands that you work with as well?
So ultimately, the key thing, and I've sat on a lot of calls during this moment in time, because you have more time to do a lot of calls and meetings, is how authentic and how invested is it? Is it a temporary give, or is it something that's going to create long-term change? Yeah. And the temporary moments don't seem to work, because ultimately the first couple weeks you push it out, you get a bunch of fans and celebs and people to jump on, and they get a bunch of views or a bunch of hits on it, or the Instagram does really well the first time, and then by the third week it sort of fizzles out. So really just working on finding, is this a long-term project? Is this something that's going to create a larger, change across many industries potentially? And now that we're in a space where on the celebrity and talent wise, it's all virtual events, you're seeing a lot of movie premieres that are happening virtually, and then they engage the talent or celebrity with this new Apple TV show, so you get free Apple TV for 3 months, or this new National Geographic, so we're going to send you this leopard blanket, because it's about the safari that we did documentary. So really, and then within those offers for virtual events, you'll see that proceeds from the film will now be going to X, Y, and Z. So it's really kind of seeing how there are these temporary moments that people are creating, and then who out there is actually creating long-term change and investing in long-term change.
Yeah, and those temporary moments can seem, you used the word authentic earlier, and you try to do that for your brands. Some of this stuff just doesn't feel authentic. Some of the celebrities out there, putting things on social media and so on, some of them just don't feel authentic. And what is it, the old cause du jour or the cause de célébrité? It's like, okay, what are we into now? Okay, great. Let's just do that for the next couple of months. But it will be interesting to see how long people can have an appetite for something that is so important. Health and social justice initiatives, these are two very basic human rights. And the battle for healthcare in this country has gone on for so long, and it is still going on. And now, I've worked with, my main job is working for, I'm an auctioneer and an MC, and I work at all these big events, and haven't been able to do any fundraising live in front of a gigantic room or a gigantic festival, as I might call it, for this podcast. But I haven't been able to do any of those things. But clients I've worked with, I've said, well, why don't we relate as things started to develop? And I had one particular event the week after George Floyd was murdered. I said, why don't we take your message and your mission and put that mission and message of healthcare and show how there has been so much social injustice in healthcare, where people are saying, why is the Black community getting COVID-19 positive tests more than other communities? Well, there's some correlations to that. People are either underinsured or uninsured because of job situations, because living in lower income neighborhoods, not having the right medical facilities within those neighborhoods, and having to live multi-generational together, where you've got older families living with young kids who are out more and then bringing that back home. And there's a lot of reasons to that. So let's connect the mission to the social justice issues. And it's like, you know what, that makes a lot of sense. And I said, this should be in your marketing going forward. And speaking of that, I don't see a festival going on for a long time. As many festivals as we talked about earlier have had charitable elements to them. And a celebrity who might start a festival would have a charitable element to them, or they've got a pet charity or something that has affected them personally. But I think they can still have that charitable element, but also they must highlight social injustice things they must highlight social injustice and reform going forward. I think the people that are coming to the festivals demand it. And I think it's an excellent platform to deliver that message. So do you think that the festivals will continue to be a good avenue for these brands if they want to look authentic, if your clients want to be authentic going forward, and you're saying, forget about the temporary program, here is your long-term answer to aligning your product, your brand, with these smart social justice initiatives that are, or aligning your brand. Here's the best way to align your brand with someone who is I'll just say that one more time. So this festival is giving you the opportunity to align your brand for a long time with a social justice message and a message of basic human rights. And is that something that you're talking with clients about now?
Absolutely. I definitely think, especially because the festival space has always been so inclusive and it's so accepting of so many different age groups, races, people, gay, straight, everyone is an ally. There's so much talk now about who's your ally and where are the allies that are going to speak for these marginalized groups that aren't getting what they need. And ultimately, when you enter a festival space, whether it be in dance music or you go to a Coachella, Lollapalooza, Ultra, the feeling of, looking around and realizing myself and 100,000 people are all aligned in this moment that's given to us through music, through performance, through dance, and the way that you cultivate the community around you of your friends. It's so diverse that ultimately festival space has always been, to me, a market that is untapped with certain groups and certain brands and people that don't think that they could get into it. But definitely, I mean, there's so many festivals already. I know that when I worked with Insomniac, every one of our festivals gave a portion of the proceeds to a local charity where the festival was taking place. So a company like that is already engaging in stuff like that, which you'll see has taken off with other festival brands as well. But it's definitely something now where it opens up a space for you to immediately show your audience and show the people that are coming that you are engaged and you are invested in this. And, you know, whether it's something like a Rock the Vote, you know, and I say Rock the Vote because we worked with Rock the Vote multiple times at various festivals where we had their banners, we shined their imaging and text, you know, their number to this to register to vote. We've done all of that. And it helped because ultimately the demographic of festival goers is 18 to 35. It is the market that does not want to vote and that does not want to show up for these things. But this last resurgence of COVID going into George Floyd has engaged this community at a level that's never been seen before. The amount of time that's being spent and continuing to engage people and continuing to remind people of the injustices. And I've always felt like, because I've always been like the director of, you know, some younger PR kids, always, even when I was an assistant, they quickly realized like she's older.
Young PR kid.
Yeah, like she has a lot of life experience. And so I always felt myself like back in my day, you know, and all of a sudden I'm like talking like I'm the grandpa of the group. And it's like, but now it's like, I'm so proud to see this younger community that I've always felt, you know, could be doing a lot. And most of them aren't doing a lot, are suddenly so engaged, and bringing that into the general population that is the festival followers. And when I say festival followers, like festival season, as you know, is a thing. Like they all mark it as the top of the year and it runs through the entire summer, and people plan and go from show to show, which that takes money, planning, intelligence, you know, arranging travel, like all of those things take so much more than they're given credit for. And I think brands need to really understand and realize that. And the ones that have already been there, great. Make sure your message is on target and make sure that you're aligned in the right ways, and make sure your CEOs have cleaned up their, you know, racist social media past. I don't know, like that stuff scares me. And make sure you confer with people who are actually living and breathing within the message. I think, for example, when you look at what Alexis Ohanian did recently, where he stepped off of his board to bring somebody of color to be added to the board of Reddit.
Wow.
Ultimately, he's doing that to give someone that is authentically living and breathing within this moment in time a space at the table. And you need to engage literally at the board table of a multi-billion-dollar brand, right? So ultimately, you need people that are engaged directly and not just, you know, Jimmy marketing guy who's in charge of working on the charitable angle, and they meet and they're like, yeah, this one sounds cool, let's do that, let's pick B. But actually going out, meeting with people, seeing what they're about, and how you can bring that on site, you know, because years ago when I went to Lollapalooza, this was right when Black Lives Matter had first started. They had a couple of activations on the grounds of Grant Park, and they were signing people up, they were talking to people. And this was like 4 years ago. And I always go back to that, how amazing that was to see that festival in the middle of Chicago, so engaged in a movement that had just begun. And now to see how far it's come. And I think you're going to see stuff like that at festivals moving forward, where if you're not engaging in the social justice and finding brands that will relate to that, you're not going to be doing it right, because people now want it. Young people want it. Look at the TikTok thing that happened with Trump this week with his rally. Like, they completely bought 1 million tickets, and then 6,000 people showed up because all the TikTok kids signed up for all the tickets. And so they really thought 1 million people were coming. But meanwhile, these kids on social media, you know, we're doing their job in social justice. And it's like, I don't have kids, but if I had a 14-year-old that had done that, he was definitely getting a new pair of Jordans or going to the mall, or we're doing something awesome. Because like, I had never been more proud. And I was like, God, this is exactly what should be happening. This is their own way of engaging.
What a coup.
in activism, and
Yeah.
and I think in their own way, and it was all secret, and it was all behind the scenes, and nobody knew, and everything got deleted, so there's no history of it. But the pride in that moment, I think engaging in that and continuing to engage it on the grounds of festivals is definitely necessary.
Yeah. What a story. As I was saying there, what a coup, because it really was. And it's just, we don't have enough time to get into him and that stuff. But anyway, I will just say him. But it's amazing. But you look back just, I think 2 years ago, I won't say the brand, but you just look back a couple of years ago, and there was a major soft drink brand. I won't say their name, but let's say they rhyme with Lepsy. And they had that campaign with a major influencer, paid her a lot of money, and there wasn't a single person on the set or single person who would step up and say, do you think maybe we should make this a little bit more diverse? Do you think this is really speaking to the Lepsy generation? And are we saying this is the Lepsy generation? And I'm sure that since then has been a major case study in your business to say what not to do, as many case studies are.
I mean, we absolutely, I know exactly what you're talking about. And what's funny is when all the protests started happening, you saw a resurgence in people talking about that and calling out this person and saying like, hey, where are they? Aren't they going to save us with their Lepsy? Because at the end of it, that's how it ended, right? And you go back and you think nowhere in this process did someone say no. There's always so many yes people when you get to the top, and this is so amazing, and a lot of patting on the back. We've got it. We figured it out. We got this huge girl with 100 million followers, and it's going to finally push us over the line where we beat the other brands. And it's like, really? And it was at a point where enough protesting had gone on, and we had seen enough tragedy and horrible things happening where people were really starting to actually understand and feel more. Because I think to a certain point, I don't know that we've all turned a blind eye to it. We've all kind of known it's there if you have a certain awareness just of the world around you, simply said. But no one actually was feeling it and in the depths of themselves to actually leave their homes and march with people and call and send emails. Like, I've sent so many emails recently, and I don't know if they're ever getting read. I don't care if they ever get read, but it makes me feel good to know that I'm actually trying to do something that makes sense for people. And that, going back to that ad campaign, she should have known better. I always go back, like, where was her publicist? Like, I always just think, like, because I would have thrown myself in front of a bus before this happened, right? And you just think, well, then where was her manager? And then where was her, you go back down on her own personal team, and who on the team, forget the brand itself, who on her side didn't say, this was not the right vibe, this is not the right thing for you to do. But collectively all, roads convened to that day of shooting, and they all thought, oh, this is amazing, we're going to really knock it out of the park. And it's just the most not authentic thing. It just really made a comedy out of it. And then it took social justice and made it, I don't know, like fluffy. And there's nothing about this stuff. There's nothing fluffy about racism, about police brutality, about the things that people go through. And it's just, it's sadly part of her legacy. And it's just really sad to see that that's what people remember now about this brand, and how that can tarnish your image, because now people don't go back and say, oh, look at this awesome new soda flavor. They just go back to that ad now, because in this moment in time, that is their memory of the brand. And it's just, not their best. Right.
You said it turned out to be a comedy of errors, and Saturday Night Live's like, well, then I guess we'll step in because we're excellent at a comedy of errors. That's what we specialize. We've been specializing in that for 50 years, so let's do it.
Yeah.
So, Nedda, thank you so much for all your time today and your very thoughtful insight to all the issues we're currently dealing with, and will continue to deal with for many, many years going forward. But let's talk about you as a figure skater. What was that like? Because in the COVID world, if there's one sport that I could see coming back, if golf can come back,
Right.
Can't figure skating, although I would say it's not really a summer sport, but if ice hockey's coming back and that's a team sport, can't we have some figure skating going on and can't we have like almost like a mini Olympics right now with some figure skaters?
I wish, first of all, because just because I left the sport doesn't mean that I don't quietly follow it behind the scenes and still have my foot in, had my foot in the door a little bit. My sister still coaches, so I get to offer commentary on the side to her. And, you know, when I see random news about skaters or coaching changes or this or that, I always just like send a quick text like, I can't believe this is happening. But with figure skating, I mean, it's a year-round sport, which people don't understand. You know, we grew up training here in LA where there's so many rinks. Every 20 minutes you can drive up and down the freeway in any direction and find skating rinks. And there's so many coaches that LA has become a hotbed for training. In fact, the world champion trains down in Irvine. You know, I grew up skating with Michelle Kwan. That's my era. So she was literally a childhood friend of mine. So to this day, like she's an ally and a friend of mine. And so we came up through an environment that was just morning, noon, and night. Your skating friends were your only friends. I didn't really have a lot of high school friends, you know, and they didn't relate to you because you didn't do PE, you didn't come to slumber parties. And then ultimately, when I transitioned into coaching, there was a part of myself as like a normal person or a civilian, I like to call them, that I wanted to bring back to my students because I didn't want them to have to live a part of their life that didn't have a social, you know, construct, because I didn't have any social skills when I quit skating. And you look at skating now and like, you're like, yeah, why can't they just skate and stay far away from each other? Because the sessions are, you know, they don't have to do public sessions. They're on private ice. That's for this level of skating. You know, they're all broken up into like levels, like beginner session, intermediate, and then elite skaters. So I think as long as they could stay distant from each other, it shouldn't be an issue. But ultimately, at the same time, though, if you have 20 kids out there sweating, because by the way, you do sweat when you skate. It's really weird to say, but it's a different kind. I was really sad to see it all get canceled. Our great skater that we have now is Nathan Chen, who trains in Irvine, and he's amazing. And he was on his way to totally winning another world championship. And I think when the shutdown happened, it was a week before the world championships in Canada. And I kept thinking, but Canada, they're so great. And it's probably cleaner there. And like, nobody has germs in Canada. Like, they're just like why can't they just go? Yeah, why can't they just go skate in Canada? You know, so it's sad to say, but I definitely think it's a sport that can come back and wouldn't be as largely affected as something, I don't know, else where you're in a close collective environment. But if they're still trying to project that the NFL could come back and a bunch of men are going to sweat on themselves and the NBA is about to come back in the Disney bubble, I think skating could, I definitely think there's an avenue for skating. You know, it's a solo sport. Your coach doesn't have to talk to you. And I know that during the lockdown, a lot of coaches have been doing like Zoom off-ice training and just Zoom yoga classes just to stay engaged with their students because, you know, as soon as they lose interest and they're 14 or 15 and, you know, they're like, oh, I could just like go to the beach with my friends. I don't need to skate anymore. It's over, you know, like that's it. They just walk out the door. So like I just know from my friends in the community, it's been a hard time to just keep people engaged and come up with reasons and promising them like, it's going to come back. It's going to come back. But I just spoke to someone this morning who let me know that a couple local rinks had just opened up and she's like, maybe we can go skating soon. You just never know. But I definitely think it's possible.
How about we get some DJs together and, you know, a DJ at the arena, skater on the ice. We do a little EDM skate festival. We can bring two of your loves together, and we can start broadcasting that through YouTube. Bring some of your brands to be associated with it. Do a diverse skating team, and we can raise some money for some great issues. We can have a lot of fun, and people can really fall in love with skating because new fans will come along with that.
That is like my dream birthday party that you've just mapped out for me. And my birthday's in November, so I'm
marking it down.
But I definitely think it could be a fun idea. I mean, DJs normally show up very much like they used to at the roller skating rink for public sessions and play. you know, so
Yeah,
it
sure.
could
Why not?
work, except
We'll
for
make
the fact that like skaters love the limelight. It's such a solo sport, you know, so you have to kind of treat them all like kid gloves, like the way you would a tennis player. They're part of a team that that created them, but ultimately, when in that moment, it's very me. So I don't know how they would all collectively get down with this, but we could make it work, I think.
Well, I think our TikTok friends would help us sell 1 million tickets legitimately through this.
That's it.
And
That's
we could show that guy in DC what a real crowd looks like. Greatest, biggest crowd ever for skating and EDM. Skating and EDM, my two favorite things besides fast food. He would all of a sudden realize that there's 1 million new voters out there that he could try and brainwash. Anyhow, well, look, we've been talking about so many great things around festivals and brands and talent, and we are all branded out of time here. So Nedda Saltani, Director of Lifestyle and Talent PR for EFG PR, how can people find out more about your company and the great things that you guys are doing?
You can check us out on Instagram, EFG PR. You could look us up, just Google it, Entertainment Fusion Group or EFG PR. We come up. I hesitate to give you my social media because my social media is just for me. But if you look me up, I'll give you a hint. You can look up That Girl Nedda and you'll find me. And
she's 100% That Girl Nedda.
I fancy myself to be sort of like a Madonna, a Cher, and Elvis. I just have one name. And yeah, you can learn about the things that we do and, you know, look forward to being able to do for people for a long time to come.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much for the time. We really appreciate it. And we will see you next time on Festival Pass Stories.
Thank you.